I woke up as a despised Omega with a broken seal. Then every Alpha started watching me. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, it is free, and it is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic and emotional stories like this one. Your support truly means the world to us. Before we begin, tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching from and what time it is where you are right now. We love seeing how far these stories travel and knowing who is joining us today. Now, let's begin today's story. The strangest thing about waking up in someone else's life was not discovering that I was an Omega everyone despised. It was realizing that something inside my new body had been waiting for me to arrive. My name was Adrian Vale, at least according to the identification card beside the hospital bed, and I was 26 years old. That was where the simple facts ended. Memories that were not mine arrived in fragments. Royal Academy. Failed evaluations. Whispered insults. A wealthy family that treated its Omega son like an embarrassing accounting error. And beneath all of it was the same image, a black 7-point seal wrapped around my left wrist. Doctors called it defective. Professors called it proof that my secondary traits had developed incorrectly. Adrian's father called it shameful. I called it suspicious. 3 hours after waking, I requested my medical records. The nurse looked surprised. Apparently the previous Adrian rarely questioned anyone. I spent the afternoon comparing examination dates, blood work, and photographs of the seal. One detail bothered me immediately. Everyone claimed the seal was deteriorating, yet the photographs showed the opposite. The oldest image contained 7 complete dark rings. Every year afterward, one ring became thinner. Whatever was happening was not spreading inward. Something was breaking outward. 2 days later, I returned to the Royal Academy because Adrian's formal dismissal required my signature. The administrative building looked more like a government courthouse than a school, with marble floors, vaulted windows, and portraits of alpha families covering the walls. People noticed me immediately. Some whispered. Others simply stared at the Omega, who had supposedly failed every compatibility assessment the Academy considered important. I signed the dismissal papers without arguing. The registrar blinked. "You are not requesting an appeal." "Should I?" "Your family expected you to." "My family can file their own appeal if they are emotionally attached to paperwork." For the first time since waking in this world, I almost enjoyed myself. Then my wrist became warm. I pulled my sleeve lower. Beneath the fabric, the outer ring of the seal had cracked. Not faded. Cracked. A thin line of white gold light appeared underneath it. I left before anyone noticed. Over the next week, I documented every reaction. The seal warmed near old government buildings. It brightened around certain family crests. It remained completely dormant around ordinary alpha pheromones, which made the medical theory about Omega instability increasingly ridiculous. Then came the founder's ceremony. I attended only because Adrian's dismissal would not become official until his family representative acknowledged it publicly. Nearly 200 guests filled the Academy Hall, including dozens of influential alphas. I stayed near the back and planned to leave within 10 minutes. Then the 7th fracture appeared. Heat crossed my wrist. White gold light slipped through the black seal. Every conversation in the room stopped. I looked up. Every alpha was staring at me. Not with desire. Not even with hostility. Their expressions ranged from confusion to recognition, as though some forgotten instinct had awakened at the same moment. One alpha dropped the ceremonial glass he was holding. Another whispered, "Impossible." I stepped backward. The light intensified. Across the hall stood Damon Sterling, the 31-year-old Alpha heir whose silver-eyed portrait appeared in half the Academy's historical displays. Unlike everyone else, Damon did not look confused. He looked alarmed. Silver light flashed briefly around his hand before disappearing. Our eyes met. Something ancient moved through the room, silent but unmistakable. Damon gripped the edge of the table as a voice reached him from somewhere no one else could hear. His face lost its practiced calm. Then he looked directly at me and repeated the words under his breath. "The Lost Prince is breathing again." For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then the founder's ceremony became a room full of people pretending they had not just watched something impossible happen. I pulled my sleeve over the glowing fracture and headed for the nearest exit. Damon Sterling reached the hallway before I did, but instead of blocking my path, he stopped several feet away. "Did you hear it?" he asked. "Hear what?" His silver eyes remained fixed on my covered wrist. "Nothing." The answer came too quickly. "Then we both heard something." Damon almost smiled, but footsteps approached behind us. "Leave through the east entrance. There are fewer people there." "Why are you helping me?" "Because half the alphas in that room are already deciding what you are worth to them." That was not comforting, but it sounded honest. I left before anyone could question me. By the following morning, 3 unfamiliar cars had passed my apartment building twice. 2 messages from noble households offered private medical consultations I had never requested. The Royal Academy suddenly wanted to reconsider my dismissal. My family called 6 times. I answered none of them. Instead, I bought a notebook and started recording everything. The pattern became obvious within 4 days. Ordinary alphas noticed me, but members of older bloodlines reacted more strongly. Some became unusually quiet. Others watched my left wrist as though they recognized the seal without knowing why. The effect had nothing to do with attraction. It felt closer to recognition buried beneath conscious memory. I tested that theory at the Ashcroft Historical Library, where the Academy stored copies of noble family records. Wearing gloves, I walked past 27 crests. The seal remained cold until I reached an emblem belonging to a family founded nearly 300 years ago. Warmth spread beneath my glove. I wrote down the name. By sunset, I had 6 families on my list. Sterling was one of them. "You are researching me." Damon stood at the end of the archive aisle. "That sounds self-important. My family crest is open on your table. Your ancestors are more interesting than you. I will try not to be offended." He approached, stopping on the opposite side of the table. "What have you discovered?" I hesitated, then showed him the list. His expression changed. "These are all First Covenant families. That phrase does not appear in modern history books, because most records about it disappeared." "Convenient." Damon lowered his voice. "Adrian, whatever happened during the ceremony was recognized by every old alpha line in that room." "Recognized as what?" "That is what concerns me." Before I could answer, the seal became hot. White gold light appeared through my glove. It was responding to something behind Damon. On a pedestal stood a small black stone tablet marked with an unfamiliar 7-point star. "What is that?" I asked. Damon turned. "An artifact recovered beneath the original Academy Foundation. Nobody knows its purpose." I moved closer. "Has anyone touched it?" "Every graduating Alpha heir does during the Founder's Oath. It has never reacted." "Then let us test something." Damon watched carefully as I removed my glove. The broken seal now showed 7 thin fractures, each glowing faintly underneath. I stopped inches from the tablet. Nothing happened. Damon reached toward the artifact. Still nothing. "Your theory appears disappointing," he said. "Give it a second." I stepped forward. The tablet suddenly filled with white gold light. A low tone traveled through the archive. Then the impossible happened. The pedestal lowered itself until the ancient stone rested near my feet, angled toward me like someone bowing before a sovereign. Damon went completely still. Words appeared across its surface in letters neither of us had seen before, yet somehow I understood them. 7 seals guarded the sleeping light. Damon read the next line aloud. 6 have weakened. My wrist pulsed. A final sentence appeared. When the 7th breaks, the forgotten blood shall remember its prince. I stared at the tablet. That is becoming inconveniently specific. Damon did not laugh. He was looking past me toward the archive entrance. I turned and found 5 Alpha heirs standing there, all watching me in silence. One of them whispered, "What did you do?" Before I could answer, the white gold light spread across the floor and illuminated a hidden symbol beneath our feet. 6 Alpha crests appeared around the 7-point star. 5 matched families from my list. The 6th was Sterling. Damon looked down at his own crest as silver light gathered around his hand. Then a 7th space appeared beside mine, empty except for 2 words that made the entire archive fall silent. Royal blood. The words royal blood remained glowing on the archive floor long after everyone stopped pretending this was an ordinary historical discovery. The 5 Alpha heirs at the entrance exchanged uneasy looks, and I understood something immediately. Whatever the tablet had recognized, they wanted an explanation almost as badly as I did. "Nobody touches him," Damon said. His voice was calm, but silver light still surrounded his hand. I looked at him. "I can speak for myself." Damon glanced toward me and immediately lowered his hand. "You are right." That small correction surprised me more than his command had. One of the heirs, Grant Holloway, stepped forward. "Vale, what exactly are you?" "Currently?" "Someone who would like everyone to stop asking that question before I have the answer." I pulled my glove back over the seal. The white gold symbols faded, but the tablet remained lowered. Damon arranged for the archive to be temporarily closed, then offered to escort me home. I refused. He accepted that too. By midnight, however, I realized going home would solve nothing. My family had finally sent a message worth reading. My father demanded that I report to the Vale estate the next morning for a private examination by physicians chosen by the family. The old Adrian would have obeyed. I deleted the message. Instead, I returned to the academy before sunrise and requested access to my original enrollment records. The clerk insisted they had been archived. I asked for the archive number. She said the file had been damaged. I asked for the damage report. That was when she stopped answering. Damon appeared 20 minutes later carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You are remarkably persistent. People usually call that annoying when they are hiding something." I accepted the coffee. "Why are you here?" "Because I checked the first Covenant families after you left. Every family illuminated by the tablet signed the Academy Charter 184 years ago." "Including yours?" "Yes." "And the missing royal blood?" Damon placed an old registry on the desk. "There was a 7th founding family. Aurelius." The name sent warmth through my wrist. "What happened to them?" "Officially, their line ended before the Academy was established." "Then how did they sign the charter?" Damon gave me a grim look. "Exactly." We spent the next 2 hours comparing handwritten ledgers against modern digital records. Someone had systematically removed Aurelius references while leaving accounting traces behind. Property transfers, scholarship funds, medical trusts. One trust had paid for my childhood examinations. My stomach tightened. Why would a dead royal family pay my medical bills? Damon did not answer. He had found something else. My Academy birth record contained a registration number that did not match the Vale family sequence. He entered it into the original ledger. The page listed a male Omega infant registered 26 years earlier. The first name was Adrian. The surname had been scraped away. Damon angled the page toward the morning light. Faint impressions remained beneath the damaged ink.
"There is a way to recover this without guessing,"
I said. The seal was already warming. I removed my glove and held my wrist above the page without touching it. White gold light spread across the paper. Letters slowly reappeared where the ink had been erased. Adrian Aurelius. Neither of us spoke. Beneath the name was a designation that made even less sense. Crown Prince.
"An Omega Crown Prince?"
I whispered. Damon looked toward the portraits lining the archive walls.
"That may be why the history was changed."
The light intensified. Another line emerged beneath my birth record. Sevenfold sacred seal administered successfully. Identity transferred to House Vale under covenant protection. I stared at the words until a memory that did not belong to Adrian Vale or to my previous world flashed through my mind. White towers beneath 7 stars. Someone placing a dark seal around a child's wrist. A woman's voice saying,
"You must forget us before they find you."
I stepped away from the ledger. Damon moved instinctively toward me, then stopped.
"May I?"
he asked. I understood that he meant my hand. After a moment, I nodded. His fingers closed carefully around mine. Silver light touched the white gold glow surrounding my wrist. I expected resistance. Instead, both powers became perfectly still. Damon inhaled sharply.
"Every alpha reacted to you except me. You were watching me too." "Yes, but I never felt compelled to bow."
The ledger suddenly turned another page by itself. A silver crest appeared beside the Aurelius star. It was the sterling emblem. Ancient words formed beneath both symbols.
"The pure crown shall awaken. The silver crown shall remain standing."
I looked at Damon.
"So you are the exception." "Apparently."
A final line appeared, darker than the others.
"When the lost prince remembers his name, the 7th seal will break."
My wrist pulsed once. A thin crack crossed the last remaining black ring, and white gold light shone through it. The 7th seal did not break immediately. For the next 2 days, it behaved like a warning clock I could not turn off. The final black ring remained around my wrist, but white gold light moved beneath it whenever I approached anything connected to House Aurelius. Damon and I agreed to keep the recovered birth record private until we understood what the seal would release. Unfortunately, secrecy became difficult when the Royal Council summoned me to a formal inquiry. By noon, I stood inside the Grand Assembly Hall with Damon several feet to my right and more than 40 Alpha representatives seated around us. My father sat among them. He had not contacted me since his demand for a private examination, and his expression suggested he preferred the version of me who obeyed.
"Adrian Vale,"
Counselor Bennett began,
"your recent condition has caused considerable concern. My condition has existed for 26 years. Your concern is considerably newer."
Several people shifted uncomfortably. Bennett placed the ancient tablet on a central table.
"We need to determine why this artifact recognized you. Then perhaps we should begin by asking why records concerning House Aurelius were removed from your archives."
Silence followed. My father's face changed. That told me enough. Bennett recovered quickly.
"This inquiry concerns public security. Then truth seems relevant."
Before he could respond, the tablet illuminated. Heat surged through my wrist. The final seal fractured. I expected pain. Instead, I felt an extraordinary stillness, as if a locked room inside me had finally opened. The black markings dissolved into white gold lines, forming a 7-point star around my wrist. Light moved outward across the marble floor, gentle but impossible to ignore. Every alpha in the chamber reacted. Some stood. Others gripped their chairs. A few lowered their heads instinctively.
"Stop,"
I said. I had no idea whether the command would matter, but the light immediately softened. Nobody was forced downward. In fact, the alphas who had begun to bow straightened again. Confusion spread through the chamber. Then something stranger happened. The atmosphere changed. The constant pressure created by dozens of dominant alpha presences simply disappeared. People could still feel one another, but no presence overwhelmed another. Damon stepped into the white gold light. Silver radiance appeared around him, calm and steady. He remained standing exactly as the ancient record had predicted. Our powers met without collision. White gold moved around silver. Silver moved beside white gold. Neither consumed the other. Counselor Bennett stared at us.
What is this?
I somehow knew the answer.
Balance.
The word unlocked another memory. White towers rose beneath a night sky filled with 7 stars. I remembered standing in a ceremonial hall as an adult, although I had never lived that moment as Adrian Vale. A woman wearing the Aurelius crest placed her hand over mine.
Pure sovereign light does not exist to command,
she told me.
Its purpose is to reveal what remains when domination is removed.
The memory vanished. Back in the assembly hall, several hidden symbols appeared across the walls. They had been there all along beneath newer royal decorations. 7-point stars. Damon noticed them too.
This building belonged to Aurelius.
My father suddenly stood.
Enough.
White gold light touched him, and his expression shifted from anger to fear. He looked at my wrist.
That seal was never supposed to open.
The entire chamber went silent. I turned toward him.
You knew.
He closed his eyes briefly.
I knew you were placed with our family under an old covenant. I was told the seal protected you. From what? From being found.
Before he could explain further, the ancient tablet rose from the table. A beam of white gold light crossed the chamber and struck the largest royal crest on the eastern wall. The crest separated silently, revealing a stone doorway behind it. Ancient letters appeared above the entrance. Damon read them first.
Sanctuary of the Pure Crown.
My wrist responded with 7 pulses of light. The doorway opened. Inside stood a circular chamber untouched by time, with a crystal basin at its center and 7 dark stars suspended above it. I stepped across the threshold. Damon remained outside.
Adrian,
he said,
this may be meant for you alone.
The sanctuary answered before I could. Silver light appeared beneath his feet, forming a second path beside mine. I looked back at him.
Apparently not.
Damon joined me. The moment we stood together before the basin, the first suspended star awakened. White gold water rose into the air and formed the image of a crown that had been erased from every modern history book. Words appeared beneath it.
Welcome home, Adrian Aurelius, bearer of the pure sovereign light.
A second line followed.
Lost crown prince of the first covenant.
Then the crystal water showed me something that made every previous revelation feel small. I saw another world. My other life. The life I remembered living before waking as Adrian Vale. A thread of white gold light connected that world directly to the sanctuary. The final message appeared.
The prince was not reborn by chance.
I stared at the image as another line formed beneath it.
His soul was sent away until the seal could safely call him home.
The sanctuary did not tell me that I had become Adrian Aurelius. It told me I had always been him. White gold water hovered above the crystal basin as scenes from my other life appeared one after another. An ordinary apartment, crowded streets, late nights spent believing I belonged to a world with no alpha houses, sacred seals, or forgotten princes. I had assumed those memories proved I came from somewhere else. The sanctuary revealed the opposite. Long ago, when House Aurelius realized someone was searching for the infant heir, the pure crown guardian separated my soul from its royal resonance and sent it beyond this world's reach. My body remained here beneath the identity Adrian Vale, protected by the 7-fold sacred seal, while my consciousness lived an entire life elsewhere. Only when the seal weakened enough to recognize the person I had become could my memories return.
So the transmigration was planned,
I said. Damon stood beside me without touching the basin.
A protection system that lasted 26 years. That is an impressive commitment to making my life confusing.
A second star awakened above us. Ancient writing appeared around the chamber. I understood it without translation. The sevenfold seal had never existed to suppress dangerous Omega traits. It concealed pure sovereign light, an inheritance carried by the final Aurelius prince. The power could expose concealed intentions, awaken covenant sights, and neutralize artificial dominance pressure. It could not force affection, loyalty, obedience, or love. I stared at that final rule.
For royal magic, it has unusually healthy boundaries.
Damon almost smiled.
Perhaps that is why someone wanted it erased.
The basin changed again. I saw the original Aurelius court. Alpha, Beta, and Omega officials stood at the same circular table. Nobody occupied a higher seat. Then the image darkened and a symbol appeared, a black sun divided by 7 lines.
The meridian circle,
Damon said quietly.
You know it? Only as a legend. An alliance of noble houses that disappeared before the modern crown was established.
The sanctuary corrected him immediately. Words formed above the basin.
It did not disappear.
Damon became still. Another message followed.
It learned to hide.
The implications were obvious. Someone had altered history, erased House Aurelius, and allowed generations to believe that an Omega with unusual power was defective rather than royal. Yet one question mattered more.
Why was my soul sent away instead of simply hiding me?
The third star awakened. A memory opened that fell deeper than the others. I saw a woman kneeling beside me when I was a child. She wore white ceremonial robes, and the 7-point Aurelius crest.
A prince raised only to inherit power may mistake privilege for wisdom,
she said.
You must someday return knowing the value of a life without a crown.
The memory struck harder than any royal revelation. My other life had not been meaningless waiting. Every ordinary struggle had taught me independence before I ever learned I possessed authority.
They did not just hide me,
I whispered.
They wanted me to grow beyond the system I was supposed to inherit.
Damon looked at me.
Then they succeeded.
The sanctuary responded to his words. Silver light rose beneath his feet, and a 4-star awakened. An inscription appeared beside the sterling crest.
Silver Crown Resonance. Guardian without dominion.
I raised an eyebrow.
Guardian?
Damon read the next line.
The silver crown may stand beside the pure crown, but shall never command it. I like that rule. So do I.
Then the basin revealed 6 alpha crests surrounding the Aurelius star. These were the same families that had reacted to me at the academy. Their bloodlines retained fragments of the first covenant, explaining why their descendants instinctively recognized pure sovereign light. They had not all been watching me for the same reason. Some sensed their ancestral oath. Some sensed opportunity. Others sensed a threat to the hierarchy that benefited them. The sanctuary illuminated one crest in black. I recognized it immediately. Holloway. Grant. Holloway had been among the 5 alpha heirs standing inside the archive. Damon studied the symbol.
That does not prove Grant knows anything. Agreed.
The sanctuary brightened, as though approving the distinction. I almost laughed.
Apparently sacred magic appreciates evidence.
Then the 5th star awakened. A final record appeared, revealing that one surviving branch of the Meridian Circle had infiltrated the modern royal council. No name was provided. Only a warning.
When the lost prince returns, they will offer protection before they reveal fear.
I thought of the council summoning me under the language of public security. Damon clearly remembered the same thing.
Everyone is going to want something from you now, he said. Then they can learn disappointment.
The white gold light around my wrist became calm. I looked at the crown floating above the basin and finally understood what mattered. I had spent 26 years being treated as a failed Omega. Discovering royal blood did not suddenly make me worthy. It merely proved that everyone who measured human worth by rank had been asking the wrong question. The sixth star awakened. The seventh remained dark. Across the basin, new words appeared.
The final seal is gone, but the final sanctuary remains closed.
Then the black Holloway crest disappeared, replaced by 6 shadowed figures surrounding the Aurelia star. Beneath them appeared a warning that made Damon step closer.
Every alpha who watches the prince must choose Y.
The water shifted once more. 5 figures faded. One remained beside me, surrounded by silver light. The sanctuary addressed Damon directly.
And the silver crown must choose whether he seeks the prince, the power, or the man.
The sanctuary gave Damon a question, but it did not give him time to answer. By the next morning, the Royal Council had transformed my existence into a political emergency. Invitations arrived from old Alpha families offering private residences, security teams, legal representation, and alliances. One household proposed a formal courtship before I had even met its heir. Another suggested that an Omega carrying royal blood should be placed under Alpha protection until the council determined my status. I read that message twice before setting it aside.
They managed to make imprisonment sound remarkably polite,
I said. Damon stood across the library table, reviewing the same letters.
The council will call it protective custody. I will call it no.
The hearing began that afternoon. Counselor Bennett argued that the reappearance of House Aurelius created constitutional uncertainty. Grant Holloway spoke next, presenting himself as reasonable and concerned.
No one questions Adrian's dignity, he said, but uncontrolled sovereign power could destabilize every alpha house in the kingdom.
My wrist warmed. Pure sovereign light did not flare dramatically. It simply became clear enough for me to recognize the fear beneath Grant's careful words. He was not afraid that I would lose control. He was afraid I would remain in control.
You are worried about what my power can reveal, I said.
Grant's expression tightened.
I am worried about public order. Those are not the same thing.
Another Alpha representative proposed marriage to a recognized noble line as a way to stabilize my position. A third suggested medical supervision. A fourth wanted the sanctuary placed under council authority. Every offer had the same shape. They wanted access to me while calling that access protection. Then Bennett turned toward Damon.
Lord Sterling, your silver crown resonance appears uniquely capable of containing the prince's power. Until this matter is resolved, the council requests that you exercise alpha authority over him.
Silence filled the chamber. Damon did not look at Bennett. He looked at me.
Do you want my protection?
The question surprised everyone.
If protection means deciding where I go, who I meet, or what I say, then no.
Damon faced the council.
Then you have my answer.
Bennett frowned.
You are refusing a lawful request? I am refusing to turn protection into ownership.
Silver light appeared calmly around Damon.
If Adrian asks for my help, I will give it. If he asks me to leave, I will leave.
The pure sovereign light responded instantly. White gold radiance crossed the floor and stopped beside Damon's. Silver presence. It did not surround him. It stood with him. The hidden Aurelia symbols across the chamber illuminated. Words appeared above the old royal crest.
Guardian without dominion recognized.
Nobody spoke. I finally understood why the sanctuary had asked whether Damon wanted the prince, the power, or the man. His answer was not something he could say. It had to be something he chose when possessing authority would have been easier. Grant stood abruptly.
This proves the Sterling line is already influencing him.
No, I said.
It proves you still cannot imagine two people standing together without one controlling the other.
The white gold light touched the documents on the council table. Several sealed pages suddenly revealed faded Aurelius markings beneath their modern headings. Bennett went pale. I walked closer. They were historical amendments restricting Omega inheritance, property ownership, and political representation. Each had been enacted after House Aurelius disappeared.
Interesting timing,
I said. Damon examined the dates.
all within 11 years.
Grant said nothing. His silence told me more than another argument would have. I did not accuse him. Evidence mattered more than suspicion. Instead, I requested the complete legislative archive be opened for independent review. The council resisted until the pure sovereign light revealed an older inscription across the chamber wall.
No covenant survives where truth requires permission.
By evening, the archive order passed. Outside the palace, Damon walked beside me through the winter courtyard.
You could have accepted one of those alliances,
he said.
Were you hoping I would? No good.
We continued several yards before I added,
Were you hoping I would choose you?
Damon was quiet.
I am interested in you, Adrian. I would rather admit that than disguise it as duty.
My heartbeat changed, but I kept walking.
That is inconvenient. I suspected it might be. And you expect nothing? I expect you to decide for yourself.
The light around my wrist warmed gently. Before I could answer, 7 bells sounded from beneath the palace. We turned toward the sanctuary entrance. 6 white gold. Stars appeared above the roof, followed by a 7th point that remained black. Then words formed across the night sky, visible only to Damon and me.
The prince has found an alpha who will not claim him.
A second message appeared.
Now he must discover why the world was taught that an Omega should need one.
The question written across the night sky followed me into the royal archive the next morning. If Omega dependence had been manufactured rather than natural, the proof would not be hidden in legends. It would be buried in laws, education, medicine, and traditions repeated until nobody remembered who created them. Damon joined me shortly after sunrise, carrying coffee and 3 boxes of documents released under the independent review order.
You look pleased,
he said.
I enjoy finding evidence that powerful institutions hoped nobody would read.
We began with legislation enacted after House Aurelius disappeared. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Before the period, Omega citizens could inherit estates independently, hold senior public offices, manage their own bond contracts, and serve as representatives within the First Covenant. 11 years after Aurelius vanished, those rights began narrowing. The changes were gradual enough to look unrelated. One law required alpha approval for certain Omega inheritances. Another described alpha guardianship as protection. Medical standards later classified unusually independent Omega traits as instability.
They did not change society in one law,
I said.
They changed the definition of what people considered normal.
Damon opened an older academy handbook.
And then they taught the new normal as biology.
My wrist warmed. White gold light spread across the pages, revealing erased text beneath the printed rules. The original passage stated that secondary designation influenced biological traits, but did not determine intelligence, leadership, dignity, or the right to consent. Someone had replaced it decades later with language describing alphas as natural leaders and omegas as naturally dependent. Damon stared at the altered passage.
That was never Aurelius' doctrine. No, it was convenient doctrine.
The pure sovereign light moved toward a sealed cabinet at the far end of the archive. Inside, we found correspondence bearing the black sun symbol of the meridian circle. The letters describe a strategy called the gentle chain. There were no dramatic commands, only instructions to reshape customs slowly enough that each generation would believe the hierarchy had always existed. I felt anger, but the light around my wrist remained calm. That mattered. Truth did not require me to become cruel. By afternoon, the independent historians had authenticated enough documents for public release. Counselor Bennett opposed immediate publication, warning that people might lose trust in established institutions.
Then those institutions can earn trust again,
I answered.
Hiding the truth to preserve confidence only creates another lie.
Damon stood beside me during the public address, but he never spoke for me. I explained the evidence carefully. I did not tell Alpha citizens they were guilty because of their designation. I did not tell Omegas they were powerless victims. I told everyone that inherited assumptions deserved examination when those assumptions limited another person's freedom. The reaction was immediate. Some officials demanded further investigation. Omega advocacy groups requested access to the original records. Several Alpha houses publicly supported reform. Others remained silent. Grant Holloway watched from the council gallery, his expression unreadable. When the address ended, an elderly historian approached me carrying a narrow wooden case.
Your Highness, this was entrusted to my family generations ago. We were told to open it only when an Aurelius prince publicly rejected the hierarchy.
Inside was a white stone disc engraved with 7 equal circles surrounding a star. The moment I touched it, the 6th sanctuary star beneath the palace awakened fully. A memory entered my mind. I saw an ancient Aurelius council where Alpha, Beta, and Omega representatives sat at the same height. At the center stood 2 adult men, one surrounded by pure sovereign light, the other by silver radiance. They were not ruler and guardian. They were equals. The word sacred sovereign. Bond appeared above them. Damon saw the image too.
That looks like us. It looks like 2 men with inconveniently recognizable magic.
The disc revealed more. The bond was not automatically romantic, and it could never be imposed by destiny. It could represent friendship, political partnership, or love. Only voluntary choice determined its form. Damon exhaled quietly.
Ancient magic has better boundaries than the modern council.
I smiled.
A low standard.
Then the final dark star began pulsing. New words appeared across the disk.
The pure crown and silver crown may restore the first covenant.
Another sentence followed.
When freely joined, their bond shall awaken the 7th sanctuary.
I looked at Damon. He did not step closer. He did not ask me to complete the bond. Instead, he said,
Then the sanctuary can wait.
The white gold light around my wrist brightened.
You are refusing ancient destiny. I am refusing to let destiny make your decisions.
Something in my chest softened. Before I could answer, the disc changed again. A final message appeared. Choice recognized. Then the 7th star flickered for the first time, revealing a location nearly 300 miles north of the capital. Beneath it appeared one warning.
The final sanctuary remembers why the Aurelius prince was hidden, and the truth begins with the Alpha who loved him first.
The 7th sanctuary stood beneath a frozen lake almost 300 miles north of the capital, hidden inside a valley that did not appear on any modern map. Damon and I reached it after 2 days of travel, accompanied only as far as the valley entrance by a small security team. The white stone disc opened the final path when I placed my hand against an ancient pillar. Damon waited beside me without moving forward.
The inscription says 2 may enter,
I told him.
That does not mean I assume the second person is me. I am asking you.
His expression softened.
Then I am coming.
We walked beneath the lake through a corridor illuminated by 7 white gold stars. At the end stood 2 stone figures. One resembled an Aurelius prince. The other was an Alpha wearing the silver crown. When I approached, memory returned with startling clarity. The Alpha was named Elias Sterling, Damon's ancestor. He had been the first silver crown bearer, and the man who loved the Aurelius prince before me. Their relationship had become the foundation for the sacred sovereign bond, not because destiny joined them, but because they repeatedly chose equality when their society expected hierarchy. Damon stared at Elias's face.
My family knew. At least one of them did.
The sanctuary awakened. White gold light showed Elias and the prince establishing the first covenant alongside Alpha, Beta, and Omega representatives. Their bond had been romantic, but the sanctuary emphasized something more important. Neither man's power diminished the other's freedom. The Meridian Circle feared that principle because a society built on voluntary cooperation could not be easily controlled through inherited rank. The image changed. Elias and the Aurelius court discovered that the Circle intended to reshape alpha instincts through artificial dominance rituals, and then present the resulting hierarchy as natural law. They created the 7 sanctuaries to preserve evidence until society was ready to confront the truth.
Then the person who loved the prince first was not the betrayer,
I said.
He helped protect everything.
Damon looked relieved, but another record appeared. Elias had eventually discovered someone inside the Sterling household secretly serving the Meridian Circle. That traitor used silver crown artifacts to make witnesses believe the Sterling line had turned against Aurelius. The deception fractured the alliance long enough for the royal family to disappear, and for my soul to be sent away. A name appeared beneath the record, Theodore Holloway. Damon and I exchanged a look.
Grant's ancestor,
he said.
An ancestor is not evidence against Grant.
The sanctuary brightened in response.
You are becoming predictable,
Damon said.
I prefer consistent.
A sealed archive opened behind the statues. Inside were original letters proving Theodore had founded the modern branch of the Meridian Circle. More importantly, recent documents had been added to the archive through a magical covenant system that recorded anyone using the old Black Sun seal. One entry was only 6 months old. Grant Holloway had accessed it. That was evidence. Yet the record showed no plan to harm me. Grant had been searching for the truth about his own family and had apparently discovered the Meridian connection shortly before I awakened.
So his fear may have been fear of what his family did,
Damon said.
Not necessarily fear of me.
The distinction mattered. I had spent weeks learning how easily suspicion could become another form of prejudice. I would not condemn Grant for inherited guilt. The final star illuminated above us. Words appeared across the sanctuary wall.
The first covenant may now be restored through the sacred sovereign bond.
White gold light surrounded me. Silver light surrounded Damon. A path opened between us. I understood what the sanctuary was offering. If we joined our powers, every surviving covenant site would awaken immediately. Damon stepped backward.
No,
I almost laughed.
You rejected ancient destiny before I could. You have had enough people deciding what your life should mean. What if I want this?
Damon became still. I walked toward him, not because a sanctuary commanded me, but because somewhere between shared research, terrible coffee, political arguments, and his repeated willingness to let me choose, my feelings had changed.
I do not know what forever looks like,
I said.
But I know I want to find out what this becomes.
Damon held out his hand without closing the distance.
Then you decide the next step.
I placed my hand in his. The connection was quiet. No overwhelming force took control. White gold and silver simply moved together until the entire sanctuary became warm with light. Above us, the word sacred sovereign bond disappeared. Another message replaced them.
2 sovereign wills freely joined.
6 distant lights appeared across the ancient map, answering the 7th beneath our feet. Then the frozen lake overhead reflected 7 brilliant stars. I thought the mystery had finally been solved. Instead, a hidden section of the map opened beneath the 7 sanctuaries, revealing something far older. A single black gold symbol appeared below the foundations of the kingdom. Damon read the inscription beside it.
The 7 sanctuaries were never only archives.
Another sentence emerged.
They were also locks.
The final words appeared slowly.
The lost prince has returned. The pure crown has awakened. Now the first Alpha knows where to find him.
3 months after the 7th sanctuary awakened, people had finally stopped staring at my wrist before looking at my face. Not everyone had changed, and I preferred the truth to a convenient miracle. Laws could be rewritten faster than beliefs. The Royal Council repealed the guardianship provisions that had restricted independent Omega inheritance, and the Academy replaced its designation curriculum with the original First Covenant records. Alpha, Beta, and Omega representatives formed an independent commission to review every law created during the Meridian Circle's influence. I accepted the restored title of Crown Prince Adrian Aurelius, but I refused to let a crown become the reason people suddenly considered me worthy.
I was Adrian before you knew my bloodline,
I told the council during my first formal address.
If your respect depends on my title, then we have learned nothing.
Damon stood among the representatives rather than beside my chair. That had been his decision. The sacred sovereign bond gave him no authority over me, and neither of us wanted ceremonial tradition inventing authority where none existed. Grant Holloway eventually testified voluntarily. The records from the 7th sanctuary proved his ancestors' role in the Meridian Circle, but Grant had spent months investigating that history because he feared his family was still benefiting from its legacy. He surrendered the hidden Holloway archives to the commission. I did not forgive crimes he had never committed, because inherited guilt required no forgiveness. I judged him by what he chose to do with the truth. That became the principle behind everything we rebuilt. Damon and I changed more slowly. There was no magical moment that transformed uncertainty into perfect romance. We had coffee. We argued about policy. He discovered that I hated formal dinners, and I discovered that he secretly enjoyed terrible mystery novels. Sometimes the pure sovereign light responded when our hands touched. Usually it did nothing at all. I liked those moments best. One evening, Damon joined me on the palace terrace overlooking the winter gardens.
"Do you ever regret returning?"
he asked. I considered the question.
"I miss parts of my other life, but it taught me something this world could not."
"What?"
"How ordinary I could be."
Damon looked confused.
"That sounds like an unusual thing for a prince to value." "Exactly."
I had lived without royal blood meaning anything. I had worked, failed, learned, and mattered without anyone calling me special. That life had protected me from believing power created human value. Damon reached for my hand, then paused as he always did. I closed the distance myself.
"You can stop asking permission every 5 seconds. I am attempting to avoid becoming historically symbolic in the wrong direction."
I laughed.
"You are doing fine."
Silver light briefly moved beside white gold, peaceful and equal.
"Adrian,"
he said,
"I know the sanctuary named what exists between us, but I want to ask without magic involved. Do you want a life with me?"
No ancient writing appeared. No prophecy answered for me.
"Yes,"
I said,
"but I reserve the right to criticize your coffee. That seems unnecessarily cruel. You will survive."
For once, the pure sovereign light remained completely silent. My choice needed no supernatural confirmation. Then 7 bells sounded beneath the palace. Damon and I looked toward the sanctuary entrance. The ancient map had not activated since our return from the north. We hurried downstairs and found all 7 sanctuaries glowing around the kingdom. The black gold symbol beneath them had changed. It was no longer still. A circular pattern slowly turned beneath the map, like a forgotten clock beginning to move. Words appeared above it.
"The locks remain closed."
I exhaled.
"That sounds encouraging."
A second message formed.
"But the one beneath them has awakened."
Damon studied the symbol.
"The first Alpha."
The crystal basin filled with white gold light, revealing a history older than Aurelius. Sterling, or the First Covenant. Before Alpha hierarchy became political tradition, before modern designations had names, there had been one original bearer of sovereign Alpha power. He had not been sealed because he was evil. He had been sealed because his presence could amplify the deepest instinct of every Alpha around him. The Aurelius line had created pure sovereign light as the balancing force that preserved free will in his presence. My stomach tightened.
So the sevenfold seal was protecting me from being detected.
Damon nodded.
And when it broke, he felt me return.
The basin showed no face, only two ancient powers separated by 7 locks. Black gold below, white gold above. Then one final message appeared.
The first Alpha remembers the pure crown.
I looked at Damon. He did not move ahead of me or tell me what we should do. He simply stood beside me, exactly where he had chosen to stand from the beginning. I had awakened in this world believing I was a despised Omega with a broken seal. I now understood that neither Omega nor Prince defined my worth, just as Alpha's strength did not define Damon's heart. Power could shape a life, but choice gave that life meaning. I tightened my hand around his. Beneath us, the ancient black gold symbol pulsed once. Somewhere beyond every map we possessed, a voice older than the kingdom whispered my royal name. And this time, when the forgotten world called for its lost prince, I was awake enough to answer for myself.